Good afternoon and welcome to the New Albany Food Pantry Community Kitchen. Today we're going to be talking about how you roast your favorite vegetable. So we're going to be talking about the recipe that you'll have, how to roast any vegetable. We're going to talk about the preparation of the ingredients, what equipment we need, and the directions for doing the technique of roasting that we love. Let me interject something. A quote from the woman who wrote my favorite cookbook. You guys may know her, Salmon Nosrat, and she is just a wonderful chef who travels around and has a really great gig, teaching us all about salt, fat, acid, and heat, and how all those techniques and things increase and make our cooking all the better. So the quote from her that I'd like to share is, Perfectly roasted vegetables are the result of proper salting, the choice of preparation, and allowing cooking time for maximum caramelization. And we're going to talk about all that as we go. So, what we need to do this recipe is any vegetable. Literally, you can roast any vegetable. Our recipe will say 1 to 2 pounds, but this easily is a recipe that can be doubled and tripled and so that you can roast enough to eat tonight and store for tomorrow. The other thing we need is some roasting oil, and I have 2 choices of oil that I have here, but by no means are they the only ones. You can use olive oil if that's what you have at home. I also have some avocado oil, which is a very healthy oil choice now, and I also have a bottle of liquid coconut oil, which is unflavored, and it also is a very good choice because avocado and coconut oil are both high smoke point oils. So they indeed don't, as they reach a higher temperature to help roast our vegetables, they don't break down into those little carcinogenic bits that happen when you use the wrong oil when you're cooking. And that actually would be another video maybe we should do. What oil should I keep in my kitchen? Anyway, but not for today. So today we're going to use avocado oil in our roasting. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to use some flavoring. In our Italian roasted vegetables, we're going to be using a mixture of an Italian spices. You can see some onions and garlic that have been dehydrated that are in there. I'm also going to use a little combination of salt and pepper. So those are what we're going to use. And let's talk about the vegetables themselves. You can literally roast any type of vegetables. The important thing to remember, again, is the amount of flavoring you use with them and how you prepare them. So it's the most important factor in roasting is that when you do prepare your vegetables to go on the roasting pan, you prepare them and cut them all in about the same size. So size does matter. It will give you even cooking if your pieces are all evenly sized. I'm going to use these broccoli and the Brussels sprouts to break down for you to show you how we're actually going to do that. But I also have a platter full of these other beautiful things that I wanted to mention that can be roasted. Certainly any peppers. Eggplant's a great one to roast before you're using it in another preparation, or just roast it for itself. Potatoes, of course, are a great one to roast. Sometimes a mixture of white potato and sweet potato is a great way to go. You can also roast any kind of squash, and tomatoes are one of my favorite things to roast. And we will be doing another video talking about roasting tomatoes and tomato sauce in the future. So yes, indeed, the thing you need to remember is the size of the pieces you're cutting when you're roasting and what exactly you are cutting, because these denser kind of foods take longer to cook than these lighter, more watery items take. So you'll want to make sure that when you're placing the items that you've cut on your sheet pan for roasting, you sort of match up those like ingredients so that they will indeed cook at the same rate. The other way you can do your roasting is start out with your potatoes on your sheet because they're the most dense. They'll take the longest to roast. Let them roast partway through, say 10 or 15 minutes. And then what you can do is, if you wanted to put zucchini with your potatoes or squash with your potatoes, is a second layer of roasting, and that would be layering. You just onto your already roasted potatoes add your sliced or cut up squash and let the roasting continue in the oven until it's finished. And that way you can add two different foods with different characteristics, and they should roast just fine. So again, let me show you about how you might prepare your Brussels sprouts for roasting. Now these are I picked these on purpose because you can see that these Brussels sprouts are different sizes, right? So in order to ensure that your roasted vegetables are not some burned and some roasted perfectly, you really want to try to make sure that your pieces are about the same size. So these big ones, I probably would quarter, and then if you see, I quartered the bigger one. It's about the same size as the small one. So they should roast about the same size. The other thing to remember is if you're roasting Brussels sprouts, these separate leaves, they'll burn quickly. So if you want to add a few of them to your tray, you can, because that dark roasted flavor is kind of a nice thing to add to your vegetables. But if you have too many of them on the sheet, they're really going to burn and really maybe take your vegetables to a place you don't want them to be. Again, so I'm cutting the small ones just in half, and my bigger ones I'm going to cut in quarters, and then that will allow for them to be about all cut the same size. Okay? I'm also going to show you, I'm going to include in my pan of vegetables today some broccoli. Now I consider broccoli and Brussels sprouts about the same texture and character, so I feel fine about actually roasting them together on the same pan. So broccoli is an interesting vegetable. I like mostly the florets, and I do like to just take my knife and cut down through the florets. You'll also notice if you're a broccoli eater that the stems are edible too, but down here they get a little bit more tough. So you either want to wait, hold them, use them for some stock you're going to use later, or just go ahead and cut the closer pieces of stem and sort of discard this part because it's harder to eat. Again, now if you look at my board full of the broccoli, you can see they're all about different sizes, right? So we're going to have to trim these down, keeping in mind that I want the broccoli and the Brussels sprouts to be about the same size so they'll cook together. The fun thing about roasting is also roasting vegetables and things is the different shapes are fun. We get a whole floret of broccoli and just a piece of the Brussels sprouts. They look kind of nice together. We'll also, as we cut these bigger pieces of broccoli, we'll get a different look from them as well. So it's kind of nice to sprinkle that different look in there. I'm cutting up that stem there. These are a good size, so I don't have to cut them. This bigger one I'm going to go ahead and cut. Again, my goal is to make my pieces about all even, so they will cook pretty evenly, and we'll get a nice plate of vegetables when we're done. So here's my last one, and put those there, and you can see I have my Brussels sprouts and my broccoli all together. They're pretty even size. Some may be a little bit bigger, but I think they're pretty beautiful. So I'm going to move my cutting board and my knife out of the way, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to go ahead and flavor and oil my vegetables to go in the oven. Now the recipe will say 1 to 2 pounds of vegetables, but again, you can use any amount you'd like. The recipe also, just for the sake of a guide, will say use a tablespoon of oil. What I like to do is oil my sheet pan first with a little bit of oil. And then if I have a paper towel or a basting brush, I'll go ahead and sort of smear this oil around on my pan. And that's going to help adhere, kind of get a nice seal between the vegetables and the hot pan, which will lead to some of that caramelization I mentioned. Caramelization is the process that happens when any kind of sugar is heated, and you'll know from when you make caramel, sugar over heat turns into that beautiful golden brown kind of creamy sweet stuff, caramel. Well, caramelization is that same technique because every kind of food has its own sugar within. So as we heat and oil our vegetables, we'll also get that caramelization or a sweetness that comes from those vegetables. So I've oiled my pan to help. I'm going to put in about a tablespoon or two of oil into my vegetables. Then I'm going to add about a teaspoon of salt. And I'm also going to add a teaspoon or maybe more of some Italian herbs that I have, Italian spices. And then I'm going to use my hands to mix, because I think that's the best way to rub the oil and the flavoring into the food. Of course, I have the impeccably clean hands, and that's what you'll need. So then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just add my vegetables to the pan, making sure I get all that nice spicy stuff out of there. And here's an important bit of information about roasting. You want your vegetables to be close and your pan to be full, but not too close or too full, because we want to avoid any possibility of those vegetables being so close that what's going to happen is they're going to steam. They're not going to, if they steam, they're not going to reach that beautiful caramelized and darkening flavor that we love so much. So you really want to make sure that your vegetables are sort of standing near each other, but not hugging if they can avoid it. And that's going to lead to the best roasted vegetables you can have. Okay? And that really is the extent of the preparation, the flavoring of vegetables that are going to be roasted in the oven. So I'm going to go ahead and put my broccoli and Brussels sprouts into my 450 degree oven. I'm going to put them right into the middle shelf, and I'm going to give them probably 10 minutes or so, and then I'm going to check them again. Now the cooking time is going to vary depending on what item you are roasting. Certainly, if you think about it, you're going to spend a little bit more time roasting a denser, heavier ingredient than you are a lighter, more watery ingredient. So you'll have to adjust your cooking time as you go. So I think my best philosophy is place your roasted vegetable or your pan with your vegetables on there and plan to check them every 5 to 10 minutes until you get a feel for how quickly they're cooking. And really what you want to achieve with your roasted vegetables is a dark browning or on the tips and tops of the vegetables. Halfway through, you can feel free to turn the pan, give them a little stir, make sure that browning is going to be reaching all of the vegetables so that they're equally browned and delicious. So we'll let that pan go for about 10 minutes, and then we'll take a look at it and see how far we've gotten. Welcome back. Okay, we finished roasting our vegetables, and by the miracle of television, we have a tray just to show you. So here's a tray of some broccoli and Brussels sprouts that we roasted. You can see that it probably was about 15 minutes that this took. You can see that the outsides are a little bit brown. The bottom edges are brown. The top are still a little bit green. And I expect that these will be very yummy. I did flavor these differently than I did the ones I prepared in front of you. This actually has a blackened seasoning on it because I wanted to give it a try. Remember, my belief is that the more curious you are in the kitchen, the more fabulous things can happen. So let me move our pan out of the way. Here are our beautiful roasted vegetables. It's the Brussels sprouts and broccoli. They look nice and browned, and There's a little bit of oil. There'll be a little moistened parts. I'm sure they taste very delicious. Now you remember, if you were with us last time, we worked on making some homemade ricotta. And I thought it would be a really nice combination to put our roasted vegetables together with some fresh mozzarella. So I'm going to go ahead and spoon up some of our vegetables. And on the top, we'll put a little dollop of ricotta. And although we didn't roast in olive oil, I think a nice touch would be to finish the top of these veggies and the ricotta with a little bit of olive oil. Again, it'll moisten those vegetables a little bit. It'll tie in those flavors, and it gives it a nice pretty look. And there we have it. We have roasted Brussels sprouts and broccoli and a little bit of fresh mozzarella cheese. Roasting is the easiest technique, and I promise you that once you get used to the technique, anything you can think of can be roasted, even those apples and those plums. So enjoy, and thanks for joining us again. And please try roasting. Let me know how it goes.